Welcome to Doomed Colonist with me, your host and general monitor, HDE, for that is the title that tonight's game has bestowed upon me. For this session, I'm sat with a bunch of some of the finest tabletop RPG players on this channel. See what I did there? And we're actually sat down in preparation for something of a milestone for Doomed Colonist, because tonight we're going to get sat down to our first proper session of original character creation for our first original scenario. And this is going to be played in the game Those Dark Places, which is an industrial science fiction role-playing game by Jonathan Hicks, published by Osprey Games. Now, the thing with Those Dark Places is that game does have its own very loosely defined setting, but we're not actually going to be working within that setting. Instead, we're going to use that rule set to play a game that's set in an original setting of my devising. And I'm going to give you all a little bit of information on that. But first, we're going to go around the faces in our overlay and just introduce everyone to the people at home. We'll start over here with Geigerpunk. Hello, sir.
Hello.
How are you doing?
How are you? Okay, so far.
You're safe. You're safe, Rob.
Hold on. I'm doing fine.
Fine. Okay, that was all sixes?
That was an 11.
That was 11, and no stress.
No.
Well, that's
doing all right.
That's good. That's good. You're safe tonight, Rob, because we're only in character creation. Nothing bad's going to happen.
We're safe for now.
Short of something heavy falling out of the sky onto the house. Not that I'm trying to play games with anyone's anxiety levels or anything, but how are you, sir? How are you doing?
I'm doing okay.
You are fine.
Okay, yeah.
Would you like to tell the nice people at home a little bit about yourself, what you do, and where people can find you online?
Where you can find me?
I mean, we can find you right there at the moment, obviously.
I've got a 2-day head start on you. More than I need. I've got friends in every town and village from here to Sudan. I speak a dozen languages. I know every custom. I'll blend in. I'll disappear. You'll never see me again. With any luck, I've completed this session already.
Rob, if you just don't want to play in the sessions, you can just say it's fine.
Well, we'll see, won't we? Once we finish character creation, we'll see whether we come back for more.
I'm sure you will, because of the contract I've had you all sign in blood.
Yeah, but whose blood was it?
Good point. Well, as we appear not to be getting an intro out of Geigerpunk there, we'll go straight on to his other half, immediately below me in the overlay. Hello, Flethulu.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm not too bad. I've got a wee bit of a cold, so you'll have to excuse the voice.
It is the season.
It certainly is. I am Flethulu. I am mostly found hanging around social media sites, especially the one that will not be mentioned here. I'm also found on Threads, Instagram, and Blue Sky as Flethulu. And I also hang out on Geigerpunk's channel, Rob's Retro Rambles, sometimes being the worst half of a 2-player game. Well, always being the worst half of a 2-player game. But enthusiasm counts for everything, I feel.
There are no worst halves to 2-player games. These things are what you make them. But
it's a cooperative thing.
I will say I'm quietly impressed. Like Rob's talking about cooperative things. I'm quietly impressed that you actually did a stealth intro for Rob there to let people know that he does actually do stuff on the YouTubes.
Yes.
See? Rob, you don't realise the quality of the woman that you've attracted here. She's got your back.
Oh no, I do.
Yeah.
You should be profoundly great. Nobody does this for me, Rob. Nobody does this for me.
Your baguette, mate.
We're in territory where there's in-jokes there that the viewers are just not going to get. We'll move swiftly over to this corner, where we have the indomitable, the inimitable, the indestructible. What host Snorkers? Hello.
Hello, sir. How are things?
I'm all right. Thank you for asking. It's very nice of you.
It's quite all right for you.
How are things with you?
Pretty good. I had steak for dinner, so I'm happy. Red meat's good for you.
You were doing really well there for yourself, Snorkers. But, there's Flo reminding me that all I had for dinner today was a baguette. Sad, lonely baguette.
And now we're going to be upsetting all the vegans.
Yes. And the people with celiacs.
I would have much rather had steak.
In a baguette.
Steak baguette.
I'm often both players in a 2-player game.
Really?
On the same keyboard, which gets a bit challenging.
That sounds quite lonely.
I need a lonely life.
If we were all doing brilliant things in our social lives, would we be here? Would we?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
Not gonna lie, no.
Not that I'm saying I don't value your company. I'm just.
But yeah, I'm not out drinking cocktails every night.
Well, neither am I. Nobody should do that. It'd be terrible for your liver. This tap water, horrible plain tap water, just because it's in a fancy thing. Don't be fooled. Don't be fooled. But, when I Snorkers, would you care to tell the people at home a little about the adventures that you have on the internet and the amazing things that you do?
I type in old games, I play them, I try to improve them slightly, and I try and tell the story through children's nativity level cosplay.
Yeah. You do yourself a bit of a disservice there. What I will say for the viewers at home, if anyone hasn't checked out Snorkers' videos, they are quite something. Get on over there, give the guy a follow. Give these lovely people over here a follow as well.
There's no one quite like Snorkers.
There's only one Snorkers. Only one Snorkers.
There's only one What-O Snorkers. There's only one What-O Snorkers.
Oh, bless you.
But tonight, there are 4 of us, and we've got TTRPG stuff to get into. So, are we all feeling ready to start building some characters for those dark places?
Yeah, go on.
Yes.
Okay. We're going to get into it, because this can be considered a preliminary stream, a session -1, if you like, for
an amuse-bouche.
Yeah, what's the word I'm looking for? An entree. An entree.
Yeah.
An hors d'oeuvre. A preliminary... An appetizer, that's it, an appetizer. This stream can be considered all of those things and more, just ahead of us getting stuck into our original scenario, which will begin immediately-ish after this one, where we're going to be playing a homebrewed adventure titled The Cradle. And I'm going to give you a little bit of information on that. I've actually got the setting bump somewhere on a document in front of me, and I'll just read this off for you. I mentioned that the setting that we're going to be playing our game in is slightly different to the one that's detailed, albeit very loosely, in the Those Dark Places core rulebook. And basically this is how that comes out. Our story is set in the 25th century. After bleeding Earth almost dry of its precious natural resources, mankind has redoubled efforts to explore space, discovering new star systems and establishing a host of off-world colonies and outposts. However, without raw materials and resources, mankind's continued existence balances on the edge of a knife, and so humanity has embraced the practices of asteroid mining and planet cracking to secure ore and precious metals. Demand runs high, and the drive to locate, claim and retrieve such assets has become a major focus of industry, as well as a source of diplomatic tension between Earth's principal power blocks. However, during centuries of deep space exploration and remote mining operations, cause has been found to be hopeful, not least in the discovery of the extra-terrestrial element xenithite. This rare miracle element has been found to drastically increase the yield of fossil fuels when combined with them, with further applications still being researched by the scientific community. It's been said that we've barely scratched the surface of its properties, let alone its potential to benefit mankind. The catch is that it's very hard to come by, and that's where our players come in. So, as we head into this game, all of you will be playing the crew of a civilian ore hauler vessel, the CSS Nantucket. And we're going to get down to basically the details of who you're going to be playing, and really just generating the stats that we're going to need to get into this game. So, character creation in Those Dark Places is actually very, very simple. One of the things that has attracted me to the game is that it is quite rules light. It's quite easy to pick up. And I have, prior to this stream, I have asked everyone to go away and have a think about the characters that they want to create for the game. You have all come up with very basic concepts, I know. So we'll go around the overlay again. And starting with Geigerpunk working around to Snorkers, I wonder if you could possibly just tell us who the character is that you're intending to play, and maybe give us a little bit of an insight into their character.
Right. Okay, I'm Meredith Griffiths. Just call me Griff. Everyone calls me Griff. And where did I go from there? I can't remember what I told you all of yesterday. Basically grew up in Wales and saw what was happening to the planet and thought, I got to get the hell out of here. This is a dead end. I jumped on the first ship I could get passage on and basically worked my way up from there. And a bit of engineering, a bit of security here and there, and here we are.
And before you know it, suddenly you're towing rocks about in space.
Aye, yes. Yeah. Pretty much it, yeah.
How would you describe Griff's general temperament?
Oh, it's fairly laid back generally, sort of. But he's a good lad. He's not a big bruiser, but you want to watch yourself. He's good in the security role. He'll tell people, look, I got my eye on you. No trouble. Because I might not be big, but if I hit you, you'll know you've been hit. All right?
That was the line I was waiting for.
So just you watch yourself, all right? Right. I will be fine. They'll be fine. Just no mucking about, all right?
You're sounding like every Welsh security guard I've ever met, and that's been more than a couple. Well, time will tell what adventures befall Meredith Griffiths,
indeed,
a.k.a. Griff.
Griff. Call me Griff.
In his time.
Everyone calls me Griff.
Aboard the CSS Nantucket. Thank you for that. We'll get into player stats in a moment. Flothulu, how about your character?
Well, my character is former Doctor Melissa Dunn. She likes to be called Lissa. She doesn't like to be reminded too much of who she was, so she goes by Lissa Dunn now. She had been quite a high-profile doctor, sadly no longer. She doesn't like to talk about it particularly much, about why she's no longer a high-profile doctor.
Well, I'm sensing intrigue and backstory here.
Would probably give you short shrift if you went poking into why. Let's just say that circumstances that happened made her have to leave her home planet. She had been on a colony, quite a well-established one. She was a corporate med-tech doctor, and now she's been left with just kind of picking up jobs here and there. She finds picking up jobs on the various mining ships easy enough, anonymous enough work. She can turn her hand to a bit of, engineering, as long as it's kind of biotech.
All right.
Type of stuff.
Yeah.
But she usually just works as some kind of medic, doing, general patch jobs on people when they hurt themselves during mining operations.
That certainly fits with the scenario, because I'm not actually going to show it on this stream, but I have got a graphic to depict the actual structure and the outline of the vessel, the Nantucket itself, and it's basically it's the kind of space-going vessel that it's going to warrant having people in posts like, say, a medic's post, an engineer's post, a security officer, all this kind of thing. So that's
she's found that this kind of line of work keeps her busy, with not a lot of time to sit and reflect on the past, which she likes. And she likes the people that she meets on these kind of jobs, because they're generally just ordinary people and not the kind of people that she used to have to deal with, corporate shells and things like that.
Salt of the earth people.
Yeah. She keeps herself to herself.
All right.
Yeah, salt of the earth. But she's not an unfriendly person, but she just doesn't like people prying too much into the past. And she tends to try not to rely on anybody. So she can be a wee bit independent. But she's friendly enough, on the surface at least,
All sounds understandable given that backstory. And we are sort of verging a little way into one of the details of this scenario, which we're not going to get into this stream. I have actually asked all of the players to come up with some elements of their backstory, and they're going to be kept, at this stage, going to be kept private from the other players as well, because those are details for me to work into the actual sessions as the general monitor for storytelling purposes. Quite looking forward to getting into that. All right, let's move over and complete our trifecta of players, or player characters, with Snorkers. Who will you be playing in the Cradle?
I'll be playing Chuck Murat.
I'm glad you've just come out right and said both of his names, because I was wondering how to pronounce that.
There's no fanning about with the pronunciation. It is what it says. Chuck Murat. None of your nonsense.
That's a doing name. It sounds like,
Yeah.
Sling my mouse.
Called Chucks is I used to chuck things a lot before my injury.
Injury, you say? Injury? Would there be some sort of past track record?
I don't like to talk about it.
Okay. Oh, okay. That's me told. Right. So,
I'm sensing a pattern here.
A ship of secrets.
dare we ask any questions about Chuck Murat at all?
The important thing to know about Chuck Murat is that Chuck Murat don't take no shit from no one.
Okay. Probably exactly who you want on a deep space mining vessel, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
People are always trying to give shit to deep space vessels, and Chuck says no.
I feel we're all going to get on quite well here.
We're all gonna die.
The dynamic is it's knitting together in front of my eyes.
Just a ship of curmudgeons.
A pressure cooker in space. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah.
Everyone likes pressure cookers.
Let's be honest. If you were staffed as crew on a tin can in space, travelling vast distances that necessitate you spending most of your time asleep, you're going to be a bit cranky in your awake hours, aren't you? You're going to be, it's that kind of life. I often wonder watching these science fiction films, like what on earth would that existence do to your state of mind?
Well, Griff keeps hogging the toilet in his bloody ages.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a pleasant experience afterwards.
That sounds like a level of character interaction we probably want to get into later. The next stage in character creation is we need to basically work out everyone's what's called case files. Now, for the benefit of viewers at home, if they're not familiar with those dark places, player characters tend to have very, very few actual stats that are used in the actual game itself. The case file, basically, CASE is an acronym which stands for Charisma, Agility, Strength and Education. And the way you create your character stats for those dark places is very, very simple. You simply take a value of 1, a value of 2, a value of 3 and a value of 4 and assign them in whatever order you decide to those values. So I've had the players all do this beforehand. How did you guys apportion your stats? Let's start with Geigerpunk.
Right. Well, I thought I'll just do these out of order here, but I'm thinking strength and agility. I thought he's not a big lad, so strength 1. He's not strong, but he's agile. He's got 4 agility. He's not big, but he's wiry.
Wiry, right?
Wiry. So, a little bit sort of, he might not, he'll get that punch in. He might not know where it's coming from. And he might get another one in at the same time as well, You're never quite sure.
I'm sensing that you've built quite a scrappy character here, Rob.
Yeah, maybe. But he's not strong, but he's wiry, you see. So you got to watch him. So, yeah. So, do I just write a 4? Or I've got 4 blocks on you. Do I fill them in, or...?
Yeah, basically just assign whichever relevant number under each. I think on the character sheet that's supplied, I think you do colour the blocks in.
Right. Okay. So I'll put one. I'll just colour strength in one, and agility. I'll have all 4.
If I've got that wrong,
And I thought
we'll sort it out.
I can rub it out again afterwards, can't I?
Yeah.
And charisma 3. Everyone like Griff. Griff's all right. You don't mess with it. You don't mess with him, and you're fine. You know. And then education. You know, he's not book smart, but he knows what he knows. You know, he's got enough to get by on. He knows some stuff. You know, he's not book clever, but you know, he's not thick either. You know. So
if you say so, Rob. If you say so.
So I've gone with education 2. Because you know he just got out and learned on the job as you might be. So
if I remember rightly, a good distinction to make about what these statistics actually govern in those dark places is, I do vaguely recall from reading the rulebook, the way these stats speak to the categories that they're put into. It doesn't necessarily mean that, say, if you have a character with, say, education of 1, it doesn't mean that they're stupid or uneducated. It basically speaks to their ability to deal with information in the context of what they're doing. So it's like the game works on that kind of level. That low scores don't mean that you are unskilled, or you know, obviously a higher score means that you will have a greater advantage when rolling, you know, in any circumstances that rely on you to draw on that attribute. But yeah, good spread of stats.
Yeah, there you go.
And what about Lissa Dunn? What are her stats?
Careful now, that's my girlfriend you're talking about.
The people at home know what I mean, Rob.
I gave her 2 for charisma because she's likeable, but I wouldn't say she was, you know, like she never really fitted in with the kind of schmoozing type of role that, you know, higher profile people would usually be good at. But she's not an unlikable person either, so I gave her 2 for that. That's a nice kind of middle of the road. I gave her 3 for agility because I think she's small and she's fast and she's able to handle herself without being strong, because I only gave her 1 for strength because she's primarily been like a med tech person. She's not really had to fight and stuff like that, but she's good at getting out of things, which she found out in her later part of life when she found herself, you know, having to kind of basically fend for herself. So she's good at running, jumping, hiding, things like that.
Yeah.
But not necessarily punching people out or confronting people. And education, I gave her a 4 because she is an incredibly smart person. She was incredibly good at what she did.
Interesting spread of stats there. What's worth remarking on off the back of those stats as well is that your agility score is going to be very important for that character, because in this game, where it might be a case where in other role-playing game systems an attribute like agility might, you know, you might obviously kind of think that speaks to things like physical prowess, athleticism, all this kind of thing. Your agility score might be used to dictate how successful you're going to be if you're engaged in surgery, for example, because you're going to use that to suggest your ability to deal with like the fiddly processes of maybe tending to wounds or healing grievous injuries, that kind of thing. And it's worth mentioning as well that the strength score also speaks to your character's health.
Old bugger.
I haven't actually got the rulebook to hand in front of me at the moment, but I believe that your health score is basically equivalent to your strength. And
well, that's interesting.
When you hit 0, then that doesn't mean that your character is dead. You can actually go into minus numbers, and then once you drop below,
that's right then.
You say that it's -2. Once you drop below -2, then you're dead, I believe. But you know, what kind of general monitor would put his players in a position?
What's
like,
a -2 amongst friends?
Yeah, you know, it's like as if I'm going to throw anything at you that might conceivably kill your characters.
Anyway, you've got like a fucking excellent medtech person here, right? I'm not going to be allowing -2 anywhere, guys. It's not happening.
You don't know what I've got in store.
I know what I can do to you. I'll set Griff on you.
Hey, no ganging up on the GM. We've got rules in the Discord about that. I think on that note, let's ask Snorkers, how did you apportion Chuck Murat's vital statistics?
Chuck, don't apportion nothing. Chuck, don't play those games. Chuck put 1 point into charisma, because what's the point of that? It's some foreign nonsense. None of that rubbish. But 3 into agility, because he's nimble. He ex-sportsman. He liked a bit of the old sport. Chuck. Strength 4. He's built like a shithouse. He's a huge bloke and he's fast on his feet. Education 2. He's got his basic certificates and that's fine. He can add up 2 and he knows what 2 and 2 make. They make. Yeah, you get me. You get me. You get me. You hear me?
Okay.
And Chuck's not afraid of anything in space. Because you don't take no shit from no one. And that includes Isaac bloody Newton and his fancy reactionary physicky crap.
Okay.
Bloody apples.
Chuck Murat sounds like the worst person to be stuck on a spaceship with.
We might be in trouble here, guys.
Can I be... I could be Hell Officer, that'd be fun.
Oh, lordy.
I can just imagine... Go that way, sir. There's a star in the way. I don't take shit from stars. Go through it.
Yeah.
I've worked with people like
The
that.
shortest distance in 2 points is a straight line, Griff.
Gravity well? Nah, going straight through it. Nah, don't worry about that.
We'll go faster than gravity well.
What's great about this is, like, viewers at home may not understand how much work goes into these streams. I've been working on this scenario for something like, what is it? Got to be 4 months, I think, since I started pulling it all together. These guys will know because they've seen me whittering about it in our private Discord. But like, there's me working away, like building this thing, saying, oh yeah, is this great nuanced situation? Is this setting? Yeah, I've got to like it before my players can like it. I've got to feel happy with it. Finally, I present it to you all in this beautifully gift wrapped package.
And we throw characters like this at you.
But it's great. This is what I want because.
We want a bit of tension. Otherwise it's people being nice in space.
Yeah.
And that's Star Trek.
This adds the element of unpredictability to the game that, makes it all interesting for me as the guy running the game. So, no complaints.
How do you think Melissa feels stuck with these 2 nut jobs?
Hey, what's the problem here?
You're always on the toilet, Griff. That's the problem.
Hey, I just want some me time, that's all.
Yeah, you just wait till you meet the NPCs. That'll give you something to sink your teeth into. Right. Okay, the next phase of character creation is that... I'm just looking over my notes here, and I nearly skipped ahead of something. We do have a derived statistic that everybody has to calculate, and this is your pressure bonus. This is because in those dark places, it is a mechanical feature of the game that certain situations will raise your character's stress levels. Now, we had a system like this when we played the Alien RPG previously. It's a bit simpler in those dark places, in that the whole stress mechanic is quite streamlined. But your pressure bonus is basically a stat that you can lean on when your characters are called on to make pressure rolls in the game. And you calculate this bonus by taking your character's strength and education stats and adding them together. What have you got, Rob?
Well, that'll be 3.
3. 3's not that bad. Not that bad, because there are modifiers.
It couldn't be worse.
There are modifiers that apply in these situations.
We can only put a 1 or a 2 in the lowest settings, and those are the 2 that... Yeah, fine. It's not like you say it could be worse. It couldn't be worse. Right. Okay. Anyway,
I'm going to have to check the character sheet, and now what you do with your pressure bonus is you, on the character sheet where the pressure bonus is marked, fill in a number of I think they're dots there,
Mm-hmm.
You fill in a number of those equivalent to whatever your combined value of strength and education is to create your pressure bonus.
Marvellous.
What did you get for that, Flo?
I got 5.
5. Well, that certainly makes Griff's pressure bonus look every bit as bad as Rob was saying. And what about you, Snorkers?
Chuck doesn't crack under pressure. Chuck's got 6.
6. That could be very useful. That's all good. So it sounds like we've got a reasonably tough bunch of space hombres.
Well, we've got a mix.
Oh, he's wiry though.
I'm wiry.
Okay, the next stage in character creation for those dark places is that we have to apportion crew positions. Now, in the core rulebook for those dark places, it specifies a number of different positions that player characters can serve on a spaceship's crew. Some of these positions are mandatory, others are left to the discretion of players, and each player is able to choose 2 positions that their character can fulfill. There's also a third unique position that I've introduced for this scenario, which is going to be available to 1 player out of the team, and that's going to bear a little bit of discussion in a moment. But we'll quickly look over the list of positions which are available to players. The 2 mandatory positions, which is to say these are jobs that player characters must fill, are that of Helm Officer and Navigation Officer, which makes sense in our setting because you're all aboard a spaceship. Optional positions are those of Science Officer, Security Officer, Liaison Officer, Engineering Officer, and Medical Officer. And the way that this works is that each player can take a primary and secondary position to add to their character sheet. You can have a little bit of doubling up across the party in some of these positions if some of you want to do broadly similar things. However, just be aware that that Helm Officer and Navigation Officer position, that they must be filled by 1 or 2 of you. The way that the dynamic of the primary and secondary position works is that in the process of the game, as you make dice rolls, if you can determine that your primary crew position has a bearing on the outcome of that roll, you gain a +2 modifier to the roll. If you have to make a dice roll where your secondary crew position could be seen to have a bearing on that, then you gain a +1 modifier. So what it's all about is basically defining the jobs that you fulfill on the crew. They dictate to your ability in certain areas or in certain situations. So, with all of that established, what crew positions are we all intending to play? And I know that there may be a little bit of clash here and it may require a little bit of smoothing out.
I'd quite fancy being the crane operator.
Okay, I know that before the stream, Geigerpunk actually said that you would quite like the crane operator's position.
I don't mind. I'm happy to let Snorkers do that. I'm curious as to what helm and navigation actually require. I was thinking being like Brett or Parker and being because he's sort of like engineering and crane and that sort of thing. But I'm happy if like Nav or Helm is. They're probably quite laid back roles, aren't they? Probably not much to do there.
We can look into this if you like. I've just retrieved the rulebook and I'll read you what it says here under the listings for Helm Officer and Navigation Officer. Under Helm Officer, it says, if you're at home behind the wheel, then this position is for you. Choose the Helm Officer position to drive or pilot any kind of craft from wheeled ground transports to starships. What I'm going to say for this scenario, how that applies, is because you're obviously all crew on a commercial starship, is that the Helm Officer position is basically going to fall to the guy who gets the job of piloting the ship. It would make sense that you would have more than one individual who would know roughly how to get the thing moving.
But you've got one person who's the best.
Yeah. Like I say, there is room for people to double up on this if they want to. Under Navigation Officer, it says, getting from point A to point B across the galaxy takes a long time, so it'd be nice to know that you're heading in the correct direction. The Navigation Officer position teaches you directional awareness as well as the technical know-how, and that I would take to mean it's kind of an adjacent skill set to the helm officer. It could be filled by the same person, could be filled by somebody else. I think you mentioned in discussion the whole thing, you made that connection to Alien, and I always think of the whole dynamic you see on the bridge in Alien, where you've got Ripley and Dallas and Brett and Lambert and Uncle Tom Cobley and all, and they are all...
And Butler.
Yeah, they are all basically filling certain roles as the ship's being moved around, like as they land it on the planet and all that stuff. What we'll say is, we'll say that at the moment you haven't locked that in. That's open for consideration. Flo, what crew positions would you be interested in filling?
Well, I think medical officer would make a lot of sense.
That's an obvious choice, isn't it?
Being a former doctor. If it had to be one of the essential ones, I would probably prefer navigation officer, because again, I think the navigation officer would probably need a wee bit of technical know-how about how the actual technology of that works, like how it's calculated.
I'm
stuff.
personally thinking that it might make sense to divide those two skills, either between Geigerpunk and Snorkers, or maybe to put them on both on one person. I think for Lissa, it might make more sense if she chooses one of the more
like science officer or something.
Yeah. I mean that would make sense to me. I mean, it could be said there could be a case for somebody taking the liaison officer position or the engineering officer. Science seems like a complementary, because I'll read you what's in the book under that. Under the entry for science officer, it says, if there's a problem concerning physics, biology, chemistry, or any other field, then the science officer steps up. From actual research to working out stellar anomalies, from interpreting data to making a hypothesis, this position can prove quite enlightening. And the thing to bear in mind as well is that in those dark places, we are talking about very general kind of interpretations of what these skills and positions mean.
What does the liaison officer say?
Under liaison officer, it says... Now, this is interesting, because it's one of those roles where you can see that it could mean different things under different contexts. But it says, some settlements seem to forget they're part of a larger entity, and they tend to develop a frontier mentality and ignore the rules. Then there are the problem suits, local officials who love to impede official inquiries, and store staff who might be trying to sucker you. Liaison officers deal with the face-to-face diplomatic side of things. So basically any...
Well, I mean, used to stop flexing.
Snorkers is advocating for an alternative method of diplomacy there, I see.
Well, I was about to say that maybe I should step into liaison officer purely because I had been in a high position, so I'm used to working with corporate people. But then I also ended up here with this hairy lot, so I can work my way around minors and things like that as well.
It's one of those cases of like, if I don't do it, God help us all.
If I don't do it,
Chuck Murat, liaison officer, is going to be talk loudly and carry a big stick.
He's got to be talking in the third person.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's going to be a steel fist in a steel glove.
While it would be amusing, I don't know if it fits in with the tone of the game.
Well, we can iron all of this out in a moment where we've got all this locked in, because we are going to have a discussion about basically what the group dynamic is.
Okay.
But that makes sense to me. I would say if you want to take the liaison,
because I think a doctor would be a good diplomat as well. You know,
because there is that kind of assumption that people working in healthcare, I mean, it's not always
I've got
true.
a good kind of bedside manner type of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're good at lying to people.
Yeah.
Basically.
The jokes I want to make there, but
yeah,
we'd get lynched. Snorkers. I'm almost afraid to ask now, but what crew positions do you envisage Chuck Murat filling on the Nantucket?
Chuck could do all of them. Chuck's great. Liaison's filled. Chuck will be a natural for that, because Chuck don't take no shit from no one. But I think with his physical skills and strength, and his smarts with education of 2, I think Chuck will be a shoe-in as primary or helm officer and secondary navigation.
Okay.
I don't hold with these anomaly nonsense. Nice and simple. Short distance between 2 points is a straight line. It's fuel efficient. It's time efficient. End of.
Something I quite like here, in all seriousness, is I do quite like the idea of a character filling that position who has a very direct point of view when it comes to those things.
See, I don't think he would panic in that role.
Yeah.
Like, if something went tits up, he's not going to be like...
Pressure bonus 6.
Yeah, when you think about it, the situation that I've not divulged the real specifics of what the scenario is going to be yet. If folks want that, they're going to have to watch session 1. But the situation that you're going to be in is going to be potentially very dangerous. I mean, the fact that you're all crew living in a constrained space in a flying tin can in space, you know, things can go wrong in space. When you look into the rule book for those dark places, it does basically say this is industrial science fiction. Things can go wrong. You could conceivably be facing all sorts of dangers, like micrometeorite impacts, collisions. There's other things. There's other details in the notes I've got here for the sort of dangers that the crew might face. So you would want someone who's going to be not necessarily cool and collected, but someone who knows what they're doing in the moment. So I can see that would suit Chuck Marat.
I would trust Chuck in that position more than him in a liaison.
Yeah.
You know?
Because he's obviously a man of action.
Yeah, it would be somebody that would just make the hard decisions, I feel.
Two-fisted Chuck.
Okay, so speaking as a group now, how do we all feel about the positions that everyone's going to take on the crew? Let's get this bedded in now. Now, Flo, it sounds like Lissa is fairly well locked in with the positions you want her to take. So I would be right in thinking that's the medical officer position as your primary position, and liaison officer as secondary.
As secondary. Yep.
Okay, so Snorkers, what about Chuck Marat?
I think with Chuck's physical skills, he's not a people person, Chuck, but he's good with his hands, and he doesn't flap under pressure. So he's going to take the helm, and also he's very good at knowing where he's going and not getting distracted. So he's also going to take navigation.
That sounds pretty good. I mean, we'd pretty much settled on that as well, I think. So it does mean that we've got to do a little bit of working out for Griff, because we had a little bit of crossover between who was going to do what here. Any thoughts there, Rob?
I mean, I was thinking something like, I don't know what to do primary or secondary, but I was thinking security and engineering.
Okay, right. Well, I do remember actually in the discussion we had privately, you did mention the security officer post, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I'll say about those positions. I think they're good choices because it makes sense that a ship like the Nantucket, I mean, when you see a visual representation of this ship, it is the kind of vessel that is going to benefit from having a security officer on board. That's because a detail of the setting is that because you've got ships floating around in space retrieving large chunks of valuable ores, perhaps other potentially valuable cargoes, that kind of thing, there is an issue with piracy. So it would make sense that you would have people staffing these ships that are going to be able to ensure the safety of the ship and its crew and repel boarders, that kind of thing. So, yeah, security sounds like a good bet.
Mm-hmm.
And engineering, just checking in the rulebook, it does seem to suggest that the engineering officer's post is basically one of a general Mr. Fix-It kind of thing. So,
and that's the sort of thing I thought. Yeah, he's done a little bit here, done a little bit there. He's learnt some skills. He knows a bit of everything, and he knows how these ships work and can patch stuff as needed.
Yeah, so maybe take that as a secondary skill.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, what I would say is, because the mandatory roles of helm and navigation officer have been taken by Chuck Marat, no one is obligated to take those, but you have got the option, if any of you want to take a crew position that somebody else has already got, then I'm happy for you to double up on that. But it does sound to me at the moment like we've got a good spread of skill sets for each of the players. So
we're only really missing a science officer. Science, what's that anyway?
Well, it's worth reiterating. Like, the Nantucket is going to have a crew of 5, as I've planned things out. So there will be NPCs that can take these roles. But I'm quite liking this because I can see that the skills you've chosen are going to facilitate some interesting things in the scenario itself. They're certainly going to come in useful.
Interesting. There's always a dangerous word when you say it.
It's well, that's how it should be, because I am the General Monitor.
The D in HDE stands for danger.
There is one final role that we need to apportion to one of the crew, and that is the role of the crane operator. Now, as you'll all see when we get to session 1, when you actually get to take a look at the ship you're all crewing, the term crane operator is perhaps a poor definition to describe what the apparatus is that the crane operator actually operates. But that is a very specialised role that one of the crew will have to serve. We will say that this is a job that, in a pinch, any of the crew, if they had to, could probably take a stab at doing it. But the apparatus attached to the ship, which we're going to refer to for these purposes as the crane, it's a highly specialised piece of equipment that one member of the crew will be specially trained in using. Now, I know that both Geigerpunk and Snorkers had expressed that they'd be interested in taking that role. I'm going to ask this of you, just to keep this interesting. Lads, why do you want to be the crane operator?
Well, in my case, I figured, as I've just picked up bits and pieces of knowledge here and there and hung around in engineering and worked my way up there, it's the sort of thing that, at some point someone said, like, oh, do you want forklift training? Do you want power loader training? Do you want crane training? And I've gone, go on, I'll give it a go. And I got my certificates for this, that, and the other, and crane operator happens to be one of the things, and I'm not too bad at it, actually. Got a bit of a knack.
That sounds good. That sounds good. Snorkers, what would you say Chuck Marat's motivation for wanting to be a crane operator might be? I'm going to regret asking this.
Chuck is a man who likes to take charge, and if he's flying the ship and he's navigating the ship, then he may as well operate the crane as well. Job's worth doing. It's going to get done by Chuck, and Chuck has got form of operating a crane. Because after his accident, he did that for a while back on Earth.
Well, there's a statement we can't just gloss over. After his accident,
I don't have to talk about it.
Did it involve a crane?
I would imagine there's going to be things like outer space insurance agencies that are going to be very interested in like what you might be alluding to here. But you know what? A call I'll make as the general monitor is like, time is running on. We'll just gloss over this. We'll just it's an accident schmaxident. I didn't hear anything.
Who needs no claims bonuses?
I'm going to suggest that it probably makes sense, and I'm not just saying this wildly out of nowhere. Having seen some of the private information that you guys have given me about your characters, I'm going to say that thing that I said earlier about anybody on the ship being able to operate the crane in a pinch holds true. But it strikes me that of the two of you, it's going to be Geigerpunk's character, Meredith Griffiths, is going to be the one who's perhaps more preeminently qualified to operate the crane. And that is quite an honour that I've bestowed upon you as General Monitor, because the crane operator's job is going to be quite important. You'll see in session 1. You will, honest.
I'll get the med bay ready.
Okay. So, I think there's only a couple of things left to get into now. One of those is we need to maybe establish the group dynamic. Maybe spitball some ideas about how your characters all know each other, how you arrived in a position where you're all crew on the Nantucket, and basically how you all get on. Now, we don't need to get into any real specific stuff here. We don't need to even suggest anything that's going to be set in stone between now and the first session. But it'd be kind of helpful, I think, if we've got some ideas as to how you all function as a crew. And I'm going to say as well that at this stage, I will reveal that the NPCs that you're going to share the Nantucket with, I said there's 2. There's technically 3, because you're going to have the ship's captain. There will be another crewman, and there will also be the ship's AI, Jerry 9000. So if anyone at home has been thinking, why does it say Jerry 9000 in that corner over there? Now you know. So, any ideas? I mean, you can riff off of that. You can play into connections with the other NPCs if you like, or.
So Chuck is basically a colossal asshole, and that's
no.
Why. Yeah, he really is, and that's why he's got helm and navigation, because people don't actually want to work with him.
Okay.
He's good at his job, but he's also a colossal asshole. He's a very bitter man, is Chuck. He's full of bluster. He could have been a contender, but he wasn't. And that's why he's stuck doing a crappy job on a ship. And he's good at it, but he wanted to do something else.
Okay.
I think I would have been aware of Chuck Murat. I think, having worked around various different ships, I'll have heard of him, but not necessarily have worked with him before.
Okay.
But I think that I've worked with Griff before. Maybe briefly. So I do know him. Not well, but I do know him. I've been a shipmate of him before. But I only know Chuck by reputation. I feel.
Okay. That is interesting, because a factor of the story we're going to be building together here is that there is going to be an aspect of this whereby the crew of the Nantucket are not just any crew. They're going to be considered the best crew for the job at hand. And I'm not going to give away any of the specifics about the actual circumstances under which the crew is going to be working. That's a surprise. But I'm wondering if maybe there could be an element that one or the other of you has helped to get the post on the Nantucket.
Maybe.
So maybe, by all means, if you and Rob want to have a discussion about that, off air, communicate anything back to me after that, I can incorporate that into the first session. But okay. But Rob, what about Griff? How do you think he's ended up on the Nantucket?
I think just by reputation, people know, well, he's a good boy. He does the work, puts the hours in. He's not a problem. You know,
just how good is he with that crane?
He's got the skills. You know, so it's no bother. He's not a problem. So
does Griff underplay his abilities here? Is he a man of massive understatement?
Do you know, not to reveal any sort of underlying bias or favouritism from the General Monitor here, but I've got to say I'm already liking Griff a hell of a lot more than I'm liking Chuck Murat.
I like Chuck. It sounds like he's chaos.
Chuck will absolutely not be subjected to any kind of inferior treatment from the General Monitor, I solemnly swear.
I'm thinking that I like Chuck because when we come up against possible hostile entities at various points during the thing, he's just got to be like, fuck all y'all, and just bulldoze through the whole lot.
Chuck takes no truck.
No.
You goddamn right.
When you're in space and you've got a massive mining freighter and stuff like that, you need somebody that's just like, fuck off. I've got a great big massive ship. I'm gonna ram it right up yours. Okay?
I'm like it. Do you know what? Just off the basis of that, Flo, that has actually gelled the entire crew together in my mind. I can see now how you all operate.
Yeah.
In my mind.
Dangerously.
I mean, I might personally think that he's a massive arsehole, but I'll also admire him for the fact that he's absolutely got everybody's back on that ship.
He's a useful massive arsehole. There we go.
Right.
Well, we all need an arsehole.
He's our arsehole.
Well, I like the idea that you've got a group of people who are kind of thrown together and they're a cohesive crew, but they're still very, very kind of rough around the edges.
Yeah.
And again, that plays into my mind about that whole thing, like the classic crew composition of the movie Alien. Because you think about that, they were none of them sort of shiny suited ultra professionals, were they?
No.
So I'm liking it.
Yeah, and that way I might respect him, but it's not going to stop me telling him he's a fucking arsehole every now and again.
Oh, this game is going to be so much fun to play, I just know.
Different crew positions, but Brett and Parker were arseholes, but they knew their job and they knew how the ship worked and they knew how to keep it going.
And you still felt bad when they went down.
In this case,
the worst.
we've got an arsehole who's helm and nav, but he knows how to get us there.
Exactly.
Good advert for staying on his right side as well.
Yeah.
Port or starboard is that? Helm? Nav?
I think it's right is starboard. I don't know. I've never.
Who knows?
These are the kind of details I should really be getting red hot on as GM, but I just don't know them. Well, that's excellent. There's just one more detail to get into before we can conclude our session of character creation. And that is, it's the part that you're all going to love. This is the part where we talk about the shiny goodies that you've all got access to as members of the crew of the CSS Nantucket. Now,
Cuddly toy, foot spa.
there are no
Coffee
cuddly
machine.
toys or foot spas or weekends in Skegness. There's nothing like that, unfortunately. But I'll leave this to you whether you guys want to take notes on this. It's all very general stuff, and it will, like, the availability of these goods will factor into the scenario when we get down to playing it. But this might be useful for you all to know. I'm going to read this to you pretty much as I've got it in my notes. Basically, the following items are present aboard the Nantucket, but they are not necessarily in your personal possession at the start of the story. Some of these are going to be things that you will have on you. They are going to be like integral parts of the plot and the in-universe workings of like the whole shebang, really. So I'll give you this information right away. The first important detail is that every member of the Nantucket's crew has somewhere on their person, or I have actually noted here that it's in the left shoulder, implanted via pneumatic injection. You have an ID chip, and this is to allow you access to the various areas of the ship. It's a security measure that's designed to keep intruders out of like areas of the ship. So I mentioned that piracy is a problem in the 25th century. This is one measure, albeit not a particularly reliable one. It's easy to override, it's easy to hack, but it's enough to slow people down if they have nefarious intents. So all of you have one of those. You have an ID chip. That can also be used to ascertain everyone's location aboard the ship or outside it, if it comes to that. You also have a personal communication unit, and this is a simple device that's worn over the right ear, which facilitates communication between the crew and with the Nantucket's AI, which is Jerry 9000. A minor change that I've made here from the way things work in the rulebook for those dark places is regarding first aid kits. The rulebook does make provision for every character to have a small, what's called a first aid med unit, which is basically a single-use thing that's enough to get you out of a quick scrape. You don't have those, but the Nantucket does have first aid kits that are placed on certain decks all throughout its structure. Those are going to be things that if you get into a situation where you're going to need to use those, you're going to have to track them down and retrieve them. But they are present on the Nantucket, and they are, again, they're single-use things. There is a medical deck aboard the Nantucket, a simple infirmary, but those first aid kits are basically intended for the treatment of lighter injuries, that kind of thing. And perhaps surprisingly, or perhaps not, seeing as I've mentioned that piracy is a problem, there are weapons aboard the Nantucket.
Woohoo. Pointed sticks.
I'll read you what I've written here in my notes. And it says here, despite the CSS Nantucket's status as a civilian vessel, a small cache of weapons and ammunition are kept aboard. This is because of the very real threat of piracy in deep space. Remember to be careful about firing weapons inside a spaceship. Explosive decompression is a thing. Now, you have a very specific allocation of weapons. These are kept in a locker on the Nantucket's command deck, and they comprise the following. You have access to 2 stun pistols, which are non-lethal weapons.
Can they puncture a hull?
They will not. They will not. Those are small personal arms that are meant basically for incapacitating people. So that's your concession to dealing with pirates. There are 2 security pistols. These are basically service pistols. These come with a small amount of ammunition, and they will do a fair bit of damage on a successful hit. There is also 1 shotgun, and that is an area of effect weapon that does variable damage depending on the range that it's used at. And that's it. That's your full complement of arms aboard the CSS Nantucket. Basically just what you could conceivably need to repel boarders. So there you go. That's the situation you find yourselves in. You're all stranded in space with Chuck Norrat and a shotgun. What could go wrong? And that concludes our session of character creation for this initial campaign in Those Dark Places. If this goes well, I have got it in mind. There are some other adventures I've got that we might find ourselves playing. All depends really on how much you guys enjoy it and how much our viewers at home enjoy what we're about to do. I'm personally really excited about it. I think we've got something really cool in the making, and I'm excited to get stuck into our first original homegrown adventure. So that first session will appear when it appears, and in the meantime, it's good night and goodbye from us at Doomed Colonist. We'll see you in space.
Looking forward to this.